All right, thank you all for coming today for Mum's funeral. Please bear with me, this is hard. It's also my first time at doing this. This will be a 15-minute eulogy about Mum, Jasmin Papageorgiou, and then we'll conclude with a prayer. Now, Mum was born in Lesbos, a big island in Greece, in a little, up in the hills, little town called Iasos. She was born in 1931, late in the year. We don't know what month or let alone the day, because it just wasn't important in those days. Now, she was one of 5 girls, and she also had 3 brothers. She finished school when she was about 7, 8 years old, and that's because World War II started in September 1939. Now, she had to work hard on the farm to provide food for the family. My grandfather wasn't the best of providers, so Mum took it upon herself to help the family out. Now, post-World War II, Mum could have went back to school to further her education, but she didn't. She helped out in the farm to look after her family. Now, on Jim's last visit, that's my brother, to Lesbos, the neighbours actually told Jim that they still remember Mum. She actually used to, when she was walking through those little narrow streets and roads, they actually remember Mum singing along the way. And they'd open the doors and windows and listen to this little old Greek girl, this young Greek girl at the time, Mum. And I still remember Mum at home when she would cook, she'd sing while she was cooking. It was just the nature of her. When she got about 28, 29 years old, she saved up enough money and she decided to come to Australia and start a family. It will start a new life. And she said goodbye to her brothers and sisters and came over. She missed her family and friends, and apparently she also missed her boyfriend, who was a watchmaker. Now, I didn't know this, but she tried. Mum worked hard here. She tried to save enough money and organise a visa for her boyfriend to come over so they could start a life together. But Mum worked hard at a nursing home when she first came here to Australia. And then she started at a factory at James and Kirby. Now, the foreman there, where she worked, was an intelligent gentleman. He was fluent in 5 languages, and he knew another 3, he was pretty proficient in another 3 languages. And it didn't take long for her boss to notice how hard Mum worked, her high morals, and her standards that she adhered to. So he made his move on Mum. And in 1961, when she was 30 years old, he married her, and his name is Mark. I call him Dad. Now, they both worked hard and lived together for some time in a house, all together with Dad's family and friends in Kensington, all under one roof. And they did that back then to save up money to buy a house. And that's what they did. They saved enough money up for a deposit, and they built a house in Miranda. And they lived there for some 7 years, and they did go out a lot. They enjoyed. Mum liked to hit the town and go out with Dad. Until 7 years later, in 1968, well, I came along, and then 2 years later, my brother Jim in 1970. Then in approximately 1975, 76, Mum wanted to do some business. So they sold that house in Miranda and bought a delicatessen, a sandwich bar in Cogra. The residence was at the back and the bedrooms were upstairs. And that's how life then started for us. And Mum and Dad both worked hard. They saved up money and bought some investment properties just down the road at Allawa and Hurstville. Mum then sold the unit in Allawa back in 1979, 1980 to fund a 3-month holiday for the whole family. And it's something I still remember down to this day. I have very fond memories. And after that holiday, Mum and Dad had enough of that shop in Cogra, and they sold it and bought the villa in Monterey. Shortly thereafter, early 80s, Mum couldn't sit still. She had to buy a takeaway shop in Camperdown. And in 1983, Mum met Paul and Tulla Clockers. And they were visiting, because Mum and Dad were visiting George and Maria Lagataris, and they were good friends. And, as Greeks stay together and they talk about theology, and that's where Mum learned God's name. And that was a big turning point for Mum. Life had profound changes in Mum's life, and for us too. Mum zealously studied the Bible and got Jim and I to do the same thing. And as me and Jim got older, we weren't so keen to study the Bible and to go to meetings. But Mum devised a scheme and a plan. And we stopped going to meetings, but then she stopped cooking for us. And she used to make putumades, moussakades, and she was really good. And we called her bluff, but lo and behold, she stopped cooking. And that went on for a week, 2 weeks. But I said to Jim, mate, she's not letting up. So we just started. I said, I don't know about you, Jim, but I'm going to the meetings. So since then on, and I thank Mum for doing that. She made me go to the meetings, and here I am. And at this stage, Mum sold the shop in Camperdown, the takeaway shop, so she could focus more on godly things. Her thoughts came in line with what Jesus said in Matthew 6:33, where Jesus said, keep on seeking first the kingdom, and all these other things will be added to you. Well, what other things were added? Well, let's have a look. Well, Mum really enjoyed then going out in the ministry. On Fridays, that was her cleaning day. You actually could see Mum at home. And on Sundays, well, that was family day, so we always enjoyed her barbecues. She also worked part-time to help Dad to make ends meet. And she used to do a lot of things on the side. She used to sell Bessemer, Avon, Nutrimedics, Tupperware. She was in everything and anything. And that was just to name a few. And it also allowed her to fund her holidays to go to Greece. She went many times back on her own to Greece. She went to Hong Kong, Japan, America, all on her own. She had organised it all. No tour guides, she just did it on her own. And we're talking about a 60, 70-year-old. Even in her 70s, she was going overseas on her own. Mum also helped her niece George and Helen, my cousins, when they started their fig farm. George found it hard because at the markets when he first started, they took advantage of him. And George brought some figs over. Mum goes, just bring them all. I'll get rid of them. I'll sell them for you. And Mum did this free of charge, without any fees, and delivered them for free. And George couldn't believe how many figs Mum was moving. And so he brought another load of vans, and Mum got rid of them. And she knew a lot of people, and she enjoyed it, and she did it all just to help George. And that's what Mum did. She liked helping people wherever she could. She also cracked me up at the same time. It's worth mentioning this, Dad liked his drink. And so Mum thought Dad was drinking too much. So what did Mum do? I caught her out pouring water in Dad's drink. And I said, oh, don't, Mum, please don't do that. Dad's going to go off his rockers. And he did. He could tell. And they argued like cat and dog. And I'd see Mum doing it again. I went, oh no, Mum, please don't do it. But that's Mum. She'd do what she thought was right. No matter what, you couldn't tell her any different. Mum and Dad then sold the unit in Hurstville and gave Jim and myself some money to buy our first homes. That's very generous when I consider she also enjoyed travelling, so she could have used the money to travel, but she didn't. She preferred to work hard and give us the money so we can make a good life for ourselves and for our families. When Jim and I entered the workforce, I remember my first job. I used to work at Mascot, and I started at 7 o'clock in the morning. I had to be on site at 7, and yet I used to wake up late at 6:15 in the morning because 6:30 I had to get out the door. And I left the door fully fed with freshly squeezed orange juice, eggs, toast. Mum did that every day, and she'd wake up early just to do it for us boys. That's how much love she showed us. Mum used to drive herself around everywhere, organise everything. And Dad just let Mum organise the money, the household budget. Mum would drive herself to the shops, buy produce right up to the age of 85 years of age. she liked doing it on her own. In 2017, only 3 years ago, we sold the villa there in Monterey and had to put Mum in a nursing home because her dementia started to overtake her along with other ailments. She actually changed the whole dynamics of that nursing home. They started to learn Greek there. Mum broke out of the nursing home and we couldn't find her for many hours. The whole nursing home, the staff were looking for her, we were looking for her. They called the police and they were going to put out a press release to help find this little Greek old lady. But a neighbour came around the corner home from work and found this lady. So she knew she belonged there. There was no holding Mum down. And since then they've changed processes. You needed a PIN code to get in and out of the joint. You know, Mum would even wait at the front foyer, waiting to break out, waiting for someone to come in or out so she could break out, so she could make her run for it. She even threw a chair at those glass sliding doors trying to get out. In Mum's last days in the nursing home, she had good days and bad days. You know, on the bad days, you know, I'd turn up and she goes, "Jasmin, Marco?" And I said, "No, Mum, it's John." You know, but she was persistent. I was Dad. And I'd sit beside her and she'd tell me things about her and Dad. And I said, "No, Mum, it's not Dad." And I went, "Oh no." She'd keep talking and tell me, "No, too much information. This is, no, let's not go there. Please, it's John." And even on those bad days, you know, I thought I'd do a psychological experiment. Whereby I asked Mum, "Mum, what's God's name?" And she goes, "Elarian." I said, "Mum, what's God's name?" She goes, "Come on, John." And I said, "Mum, what's God's name?" And she said, "Yehovah." And you know, she never ever forgot God's name. Right? Isn't that interesting? Because it was Mum's best friend. You know, it's true what James wrote in the 4th chapter in verse 8 of the book of James, where he wrote, "Draw close to God and He will draw close to you." Many times I saw Mum on her knees beside her bed praying to God. Whenever I'd see Mum, I'd see the Bible next to her. It followed her around no matter where she went. From Mum's hard work ethic, industrious attitude, to whatever she applied herself to, she always wanted to do more. But Dad was the conservative one. She did again what King Solomon encouraged in verse 10 of chapter 9. It says there, "Whatever your hands find to do, do with all your might. For there's no work, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave where you are going." So kids, don't waste all your time on technology. Learn new things. Question things. Yeah, as I was saying, learn new things. Thank you, Mary. Question things. Don't just accept things for what they are. Challenge yourself and see what you can learn and see what joy can be had in that learning process. Mum did. Mum died Friday early morning at 1:45 a.m. in her sleep on the 20th of the 3rd, 20. And to conclude with, wise King Solomon was inspired to write the prelude in chapter 7, where he said, "A good name is better than good oil, and the day of death is better than the day of birth." Better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of every man, and the living should take it to heart. I'm very happy, so happy to explain that I'm extremely proud of Mum, because she left me with so many wonderful memories. She taught me so much by her personal example and done so much for us and showed us so much love. Thanks. Bye.